Israeli strikes across Gaza hit multiple homes, killing at least 85 Palestinians, medics say. The Israeli military says projectiles launched from the Gaza Strip set off air raid sirens in central Israel. Deir el-Balah, Gaza Strip, AP, Israeli strikes killed at least 85 Palestinians across the Gaza Strip overnight and into Thursday, according to local health officials. Hours later, Hamas fired 3 rockets at Israel without causing casualties, in the first such attack since Israel ended their ceasefire with a surprise bombardment of Gaza on Tuesday. The Israeli military ordered people to evacuate an area in central Gaza near Khan Yunis, saying it would operate there in response to rocket fire from Hamas. Meanwhile, the Israeli military restored a blockade on northern Gaza, including Gaza City, that it had maintained for most of the war. It warned residents against using the main highway to enter or leave the north and said only passage to the south would be allowed on the coastal road. It also announced an additional ground operation in northern Gaza near the already largely destroyed town of Beit Lahia, where strikes have killed dozens over the past 24 hours. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians returned to what remains of their homes in the north after a ceasefire took hold in January. Israel resumed heavy strikes across Gaza on Tuesday, shattering the truce that had facilitated the release of more than 24 hostages. Israel blamed the renewed fighting on Hamas because the militant group rejected a new proposal that departed from their signed agreement. The Trump administration, which took credit for helping to broker the ceasefire, has voiced full support for Israel. More than 400 Palestinians were killed on Tuesday alone, mostly women and children, according to Gaza's health ministry. The military said 3 rockets were fired out of Gaza on Thursday, with 1 intercepted and 2 falling in open areas. Hamas claimed the attack and said it had targeted Tel Aviv. Earlier, the military said it intercepted a missile launched by Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels overnight before it reached Israeli airspace, as air raid sirens and exploding interceptors were heard in Jerusalem. No injuries were reported. It was the second such attack since the United States began a new campaign of airstrikes against the rebels earlier this week. One of the strikes on Gaza early Thursday hit the Abu Dhaka family's home in Abasin al-Kabira, a village just outside of Khan Yunis near the border with Israel. It was inside an area the Israeli military ordered evacuated earlier this week, encompassing most of eastern Gaza. The strike killed at least 16 people, mostly women and children, according to the nearby European hospital, which received the dead. Those killed included a father and his 7 children, as well as the parents and brother of a month-old baby who survived along with her grandparents. Another tough night, said Hani Awad, who was helping rescuers search for more survivors in the rubble. The house collapsed over the people's heads. The Israeli military said it had struck dozens of militant targets across Gaza. Israeli ground troops advance. On Wednesday, Israeli ground troops advanced in Gaza for the first time since the ceasefire took hold in January, seizing part of a corridor separating the northern third of the territory from the south. The announcement about passage to the south indicated troops will soon retake full control over what is known as the Netzarim corridor, stretching from the border to the Mediterranean Sea. Israel, which has also cut off the supply of food, fuel and humanitarian aid to Gaza's roughly 2 million Palestinians, has vowed to intensify its operations until Hamas releases the 59 hostages it holds, 35 of whom are believed dead, and gives up control of the territory. Hamas has said it will only release the remaining hostages in exchange for a lasting ceasefire and a full Israeli withdrawal from Gaza, as called for in the ceasefire agreement they reached in January after more than a year of mediation by the United States, Egypt, and Qatar. Hamas, which does not accept Israel's existence, says it is willing to hand over power to the Western-backed Palestinian Authority or a Committee of Political Independence but will not lay down its arms until Israel ends its decades-long occupation of lands the Palestinians want for a future state. A bloody night for hard-hit northern town. Gaza's health ministry said the overnight strikes killed at least 85 people, mostly women and children. Zahir al-Wahidi, the official in charge of records for the ministry, said a total of 592 people have been killed in Israeli strikes since Tuesday. The Indonesian hospital said it received 19 bodies after strikes in Beit Lahia, near the border. It was a bloody night for the people of Beit Lahia, said Faiz Awad, head of the health ministry's emergency service in northern Gaza, adding that rescuers were still searching the rubble from homes that were hit. The situation is catastrophic. Beit Lahia was heavily destroyed and largely depopulated during the first phase of the war before January's ceasefire. On Wednesday, an Israeli strike on a gathering of mourners killed 17 people there, according to health officials. No end in sight to the 17-month war. Hundreds of Israelis gathered outside Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's residence in Jerusalem on Thursday to protest his handling of the hostage crisis and his plan to fire the country's head of internal security. Police used a water cannon to disperse the crowd after protesters tried to break through police barricades. A mass march and demonstration Wednesday outside the Israeli parliament continued into the late evening hours and ended with several arrests. The war began when Hamas-led militants stormed into southern Israel on October 7, 2023, killing some 1,200 people and taking 251 hostage. Most of the hostages have been freed in ceasefire agreements or other deals. Israeli forces have rescued 8 living hostages and recovered the bodies of dozens more. Israel's retaliatory offensive, among the deadliest and most destructive in recent history, has killed nearly 49,000 Palestinians, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. It does not say how many were militants, but says more than half of those killed were women and children. Israel says it has killed around 20,000 militants, without providing evidence. The war at its height displaced around 90% of Gaza's population and has caused vast destruction across the territory.